A very warm welcome to each and every single one of you joining us for this Blue Fox F1 race roundup. The very first time that we are getting together to do this. We have just been treated to the Bahrain Grand Prix, a stunning season opening race. Join myself and the rest of the Blue Fox moderation team. We're going to be talking through all of the main action points from the recent race, as well as a little bit of a discussion about what we think this is going to mean for the rest of the season. So get stuck in. As always, want to know from you guys what your thoughts are as well. Get into those comments, like, comment, subscribe, and join us as we delve into the very first race of this 2022 season. Right, so biggest talking point, qualifying wise, Haas, insane. Loving the tweets, loving some of the memes and bits and pieces which are coming out. I got to admit, TikTok last night was quite fun with some of the sort of Mercedes stuff. But yeah, K-Mag, a year and a half, which actually doesn't seem that long, kind of scarily. The fact that he's actually been out of F1 for that long, but just comes in straight away, Q3, outperforming Mick. Got to be the biggest talking point of qualifying. Well, it is for me anyway. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's not like he's not had an exciting year while he's been off. Obviously, Mr.
True.
Maxon became a father, and
That's
it's
true.
like he never
To
left.
be fair, that's one way to keep you busy. But it's just,
He's completely validated Haas's decision, though. It would have been so easy for Haas to plump for like an Ilott or. I mean, can you imagine them putting Pietro Fittipaldi in that car? He'd have been nowhere.
I mean, I know he did the test. I know he did some of the pre-season testing, but that's the fundamental question. If they did go with a Fittipaldi or an Ilott, or I know Schwartzman's name was going around, they were even talking about Hulkenberg coming back in, like even though he's down as a reserve at Aston Martin. If Mazepin was still there and this Ukraine-Russia conflict, I'm going to be honest, there's no chance would he have been able to get anywhere near that.
Even it's weird to think about. When I saw him on his post interview, I was just thinking then, if Mazepin was in that seat, I think he would be in 15th. No credit. It's just what Magnussen did today really proved the driver he is, and how in the Haas before he just wasn't been able to.
Even that in yesterday, I say he made Q3 with relative ease.
Yeah,
I think he was in by like sort of three and a half, nearly 4 tenths.
With the issues he had as well,
Mick only missed Q3 by like 3 tenths as well.
That was it. He did say in his interview
he was only
that he felt
about
it was
3
there.
tenths off Gasly.
Yeah. He felt that Q3 was there, and I don't think anybody would have had any inclination about Haas being anywhere near that kind of competitive when it came to qualifying. But, fair play to him.
But I mean, like, when you look at Hulkenberg coming in for Aston Martin, you've got to think he literally arrived there Thursday night at midnight.
This was it. I did quite like seeing some of the, I think it was images of him doing, packing to come, actually come over to Bahrain. I know he's only done some light simulator work, but even then, I mean, here's a question though, and it's actually quite a nice point to move on to Aston Martin. Quite frankly, nowhere. They were absolutely nowhere. I've barely even thought about Vettel. Well, obviously not Vettel, but Stroll. Just, I don't know, almost like it wasn't worth him turning up. And with Hulkenberg coming in and doing how he did in qualifying, for me anyway, starts putting question marks on Stroll. How long can he hide behind the fact that his dad owns the team? Because it's not just us as fans and kind of, and pundits, I'm sure, producing opinions, but you can't help but look at that situation and start to think he needs to pull his finger out. Because right now, okay, the car might not be great, but for someone like Hulkenberg to just jump in it, with no kind of experience, no testing, no nothing.
No part of the testing,
That's what I mean.
Is it. He got P19. He got out-qualified by Hulkenberg. Like, that in itself just...
without
you've got to see through it.
Definitely a little bit of an embarrassment. But yeah, with obviously Aston Martin having like a massive stake in what used to be Racing Point.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it might be Lance's last season, hiding behind his daddy's money?
He's got to do something.
Well, not really, because
maybe.
his dad is now a major player on the Aston Martin board. That's the whole part of the rebrand.
This is, and if I'm honest,
fair
I
enough.
think
So-
part of their problem. I think is part of their problem. I think there is enough talent out there, particularly with the amount of coverage that F2 gets and Formula 3 now. I mean, it's awesome seeing those junior formulas being talked about across social media and getting the hype that they absolutely do deserve. They're awesome. But because of that, there's much more exposure, and you start to understand and see actually some of the talent that is coming through and knocking on the door of F1 places. Don't get me wrong, Stroll knows what he's doing. He's won Formula, like junior Formula before. He's won races. He's had unbelievable races in F1, but it only lasts so long. And I'm going to be honest, there was such high hopes for that Aston Martin team. I mean, especially considering how good the Racing
I think
Point was.
that's the biggest shock.
Remember Perez in Bahrain a couple of years ago?
Yeah,
That's
Perez
what
as
got
well.
him the Red Bull seat. It's
I
exactly
think
that
that's
got
probably
him
the
that
biggest
drive.
shock. This is the biggest thing for me about Aston Martin. Every pundit, every expert, I think even us ourselves, we were talking about testing. We had Aston Martin down as the 5th best team.
We did.
They looked
were so
like
hyped.
literally joint 9th with Williams over this weekend. It was horrific.
And they're just,
But,
they're
like,
nowhere.
at the same time, we've got to consider like McLaren as well. Like they were top 4 teams last week.
Yeah, it was.
Well,
We'll
Uh,
talk
last
about
year.
them a little bit more in a bit. The last thing that I'll say just with qualifying was some of the question marks around Mercedes. Now, they're known to be sandbagging. They're known to just, a little bit tongue-in-cheek about their kind of performance. So when we were seeing Lewis coming out and saying that they had issues, that there were some things that they need to work on, I took it with a grain of salt. I don't know about you guys, but I can't help but think you were probably in the same boat as me and thought, nah.
I would have been. I would have
okay.
been more skeptical. I would have been more skeptical had the car not been like you could clearly see like it was one of the cars that they were suffering with that porpoising like badly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would have been a lot more skeptical if that wasn't going on and they were slow. The fact that I don't think I saw a team that was experiencing it worse. Like, I mean, there was pundits sort of suggesting that they were like intentionally running the car just super low to make it bounce, but I don't think they'd go to that extent to Sanders.
No, that's-
So I was kind of sitting here actually genuinely thinking, okay, they're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. I remember,
Well,
I even said
But
this
I mean,
as well.
like the other thing as well is like Mercedes have been sandbagging for too long that actually when they're telling the truth that they're struggling, people didn't believe them. So
Yeah, definitely. I
It's
think one of the big giveaways with Mercedes as well was usually, most times than not, it's the drivers that kind of give off that little bit of vibe of they're lying through the teeth on the car performance.
Yeah.
Whilst this time round, there was a lot of mechanical opinions from the Mercedes guys stating that, look, we've got a couple things probably wrong. And a couple things just aren't working right now. So I think that was a major giveaway for me.
The biggest thing for me is when Andrew Shovlin comes out and Andrew Shovlin saying that they've got it wrong and they're really
Yeah,
sort of
absolutely,
struggling.
yeah,
You kind of
definitely.
think, all right,
Yeah.
It's a big voice in that team, and considering that is the guy that has ultimately, it's a team effort, but he is, in the same way that Adrian Newey is such a focal
he's
point of Red
Newey
Bull.
level critical to Mercedes.
That's it. He's what has kind of crafted this turbo hybrid era dominance that Mercedes have enjoyed. So yeah, I am quite surprised that they've struggled as much as they did. What was interesting actually in the pre-race build-up, George Russell saying that they know the issue. That was the thing that was interesting. It's
Yeah,
not a
just
case
before
of
they
they're in
started, yeah.
That's it. They know what it is that they need to work on.
They just found it
and
too late.
That's it. So could be a bit interesting. And this again, when it comes like into the race, obviously they did get the podium, but going actually to the start of the race, Leclerc on pole, Ferrari. I mean, I don't want to see. There's the thing. It's first race of the season. Don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we've seen it before. We've seen Ferrari winning the opening race previously, but I don't know. I've
They are
watched
looking
F1.
strong.
This is it. I've watched F1 a long time, a long time, and I don't know. You just get the vibe, just the way that thing sets off. For Leclerc to be disappearing off almost into the sunset when you've got the current world champion behind you in a competitive car.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
One of the
I
major
mean,
giveaways was Leclerc was finding a tenth in every sector, and it didn't matter which tyre Max was put on. When Max had the first set of softs on, he had a three lap bash to maybe try and get a move done, which he didn't do. But then Leclerc was just getting a tenth here, there, and there with seemingly relative ease. That was his surprising thing. Was Charles Leclerc's car looked on rails, which I know that statement is thrown around a lot with a lot of cars, but that
But it
Ferrari
did.
today
It
looked in
just
a completely
did.
different class
They've
of
just
its
got
own.
it right,
just
haven't they?
gelled. I mean, the thing as well is like Leclerc's found his rhythm in that new car. I mean, in the post-race interviews, you heard Sainz saying that he's been having a bad weekend with couldn't really get to grips with the car, but Leclerc seems to have found his mojo
100%.
and is.
Well, I mean, it's the
Sorry,
thing. It's
he
not just the
needs to,
car, is
though.
it? It's
I think
the
last-
team. It's Leclerc. It's Sainz.
100%.
They all just look
100%.
so glued together. Even the bonding between Leclerc and Sainz,
I
everything
think
just
Brundle-
looks so right.
That's
Yeah,
it.
because Brundle pointed that out, didn't he? In one of his text pieces before, I think it was after qualifying. I think it was late last night. He was saying that Ferrari, as a driver pairing, I think you could look at the evidence from last year to just suggest they're the best on the grid.
Yeah.
And I
yeah,
think
fair.
I think you raised a real good point yesterday, where I think me and Blue were talking about something, and he was saying that obviously with Leclerc having been on such a long contract or whatever, Sainz
Yeah.
just looks hungrier. And I think last
Yeah,
season was a real kick
agreed.
out the backside for Leclerc because he showed Sainz wants that.
Completely
and
agree.
Sainz
I think
dominated
I
him last
genuinely
year.
think Leclerc
Yeah,
had
Leclerc's
always gotten a
comfortable,
bit
isn't
too.
he?
Yeah, he got
Yeah.
given a huge extension to his contract. He's basically Mr. Ferrari, and yeah, Sainz I think was a brilliant driver choice for Ferrari. Everything again just seemed to gel, seemed to fit for them in terms of like their driver lineup, but definitely think it gave Leclerc a bit of a kick up the backside and realised, okay, great, you do have this, lengthy contract with the team, but it comes with a certain amount of expectation. So I don't know, maybe this year it's a change.
Wasn't Leclerc's contract the only one in Ferrari's history that goes more than
Something
2
like
or
that.
3 years
It
or
was.
something?
I think it was. It was a record for them. Put it that way. But I mean, that's it. An insane start. The thing that really stood out for me from the start was the way that he went from, I mean, literally one side of the grid to the other in terms of defending. Made it stick, made it work. But from that point on, up until the undercut. Now, this was very, very interesting. As soon as it started to get to the pit stop strategies, I know Mercedes pitted really early. I say really early. I mean 2 or 3 laps earlier than what was suggested or was meant to be. Went on to hards, absolutely useless. Just a
the
really,
hard
really
tyres,
bad
the
move.
new,
Awful.
Yeah, the new hard tyres definitely do not work around Bahrain.
No, I think they thought it was probably one compound too hard, but that's fair enough. But Red Bull, the undercut, we were treated to about 3 or 4 laps of some really, really good back and forth between Verstappen and Leclerc. I think that was probably the sort of the battle of the race, so to speak. Obviously, Leclerc coming out on top. The other thing that did make me giggle was turn 4. So where Leclerc was sort of getting back at Verstappen and retaking the lead. Obviously, there was a lot of, not necessarily like controversy last year, but it was brought up a lot actually. Hamilton's rather excessive use of track limits, particularly at turn 4. Kind of refreshing to hear him being warned this time around. I'm not sure how many other people picked up on it, but yeah,
you got,
there seems to be a bit of a Hamilton line at turn 4, has got to be said.
Yeah, definitely.
On the interest of track limits now, has anybody seen actually what the regulations are?
Yeah, we're
Yes.
back to white lines, baby.
Yeah,
It's got to be
Yeah,
in between
yeah.
the lines.
It's
I'm so happy about it, to
which
be honest with
is
you. I'm
Racing.
where it
really
needs to
happy
be.
that they're being transparent again with how the track limits are meant to be carried out throughout the entire season, because
That's it.
I think last season left a lot of bit of
Question
taste
marks.
in folks' mouths. Obviously, at the end of the season was bad enough, but let's not open that kind of worms. But
Yeah.
track limits last year was very much. It was like a yo-yo, really. One race there was okay to go off the entire circuit, and the next race was
Definitely.
penalised for
Oh,
half
yeah,
of
I
the
think
circuit.
It
So
wasn't even that. It was even worse than that. Horner brought up a very good point yesterday.
Yeah.
That even at races at points last year, like you could go across the white line in qualifying, but couldn't in the race. And some of them you
Yeah,
couldn't in
that's
qualifying, but you could in the
ridiculous.
race. Like
Yeah.
that
All
to
anyone
me
wants
is mind-boggling.
consistency.
Like,
That's all it is. Just sort of try to make it as simple as possible. And in all fairness, from an F1 content creator point of view and gamer, the simpler they make it in the actual sport itself, hopefully the simpler it becomes within the game. But
I
well,
wanted to mention that.
track
It
limits
kinda
in the
links to
F1
the
game
a
is
little
well,
bit more.
that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know how insane some of the track limits can be in the F1 2021 game, but you know, anyway, that's a
Well,
whole.
I
we
mean,
would do on a
other
strict
point,
mode during a race,
Well, this is
and then
it.
we'll go the same limits as we see on the race, the day before, and then we'll get penalised for it, and obviously that's going to infuriate you as a gamer. So
Yeah.
it's definitely
Yeah.
it's a breath of fresh air, I believe.
Well,
Especially
Yeah,
with all these-
massively.
hopefully, again, it's one race. Obviously, it wasn't too much, but in terms of kind of infractions, obviously a bit of a light warning. But I just hope that there is consistency for the rest of the year. I know there's new stewards in place, a whole new kind of stewarding setup.
New race director.
Well, that's it. It's just you just want. That's all I think anyone wants. Drivers want to be in the know, teams want to be in the know, and us as F1 gamers want that kind of simpler, more clearer idea when it comes to track limits actually translating across into the game. Hopefully, it's a good thing. Hopefully, but there was the speaking of like track limits and certain transgressions. Did like the irony that it was 6-lapped cars getting to
I
get
saw
overtake
so many
after.
memes on Twitter about that.
I
Just the
know.
flashbacks
This
and
is
it's
it.
just,
Flashback straight away. Obviously,
Uh,
that all started because of Gasly's fire. As we understand, I think it was their MG UK.
yeah,
Which,
MG
of
UK
course,
related.
that
apparently.
engine cover started to get a little bit melted, but obviously we
did
ended
anybody
up having
notice where his car stopped?
Yeah, obviously
Yeah,
same
yeah,
place.
exactly.
Road
I
Show,
was
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Scary
Rosen
omen,
last
wasn't
year.
Uh,
Yeah,
what it was.
yeah, twice in 2 years, a sort of significant fire in the same place. But yeah,
Yeah.
somehow I think Grosjean's beats it. But
Oh yeah, Grosjean.
Yeah, definitely. But if
Like,
we can
but
touch
even
on
though
the
even though it's
on
bad
the
to say,
cars.
that's it.
Yeah.
But obviously that then brings out the safety car, bunches everybody up. Now at this point,
Which I
Verstappen
think
had
plays-
been complaining about. I think it was to do with his power steering.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it was
Yes.
at high speed, really starting to struggle. Ultimately, he goes out, and then almost immediately, we get the news
Perez
about
is
his
out.
issue. Perez then starts experiencing the issue. Now, I don't know if it was a case of there had been radio communication before that point to say Perez had some kind of issue, but Perez has seemed a lot more sudden, and I cannot help but think the fact that you got this same car, same constructor, pretty much same time of the race, got to be.
Well,
linked.
this is as soon as
Got
I
to be
saw that
linked.
Alpha Tauri have issues, and then I start hearing about Max, hearing about Perez, you just get the trend of the new Red Bull unit. I just feel
Yeah.
it could have concerns. Maybe at
Yeah,
these
one
hotter
thing I
tracks
will
or-
say is immediately post race when they're talking to Horner was adamant that Gasly's was not related to
Right, okay.
Max and
Yeah,
Perez's
mate,
issue.
I think it
So
seems it was a bit more mechanical.
Gasly's was very
so to
much
speak.
Gasly's was very much like MG UK solely, and something electrical issue, and then fire started.
Yeah.
Whereas I say they're pretty sure that both Verstappen's and Perez engine issues are actually with the actual combustion engine itself, the IC.
Fuel pump issue is what Red Bull have released. on
yeah,
their
fuel pump
statement.
issue, I think
it was a
that
fuel
is
pump
the
issue.
official
Yes,
statement.
it's what Red Bull
Obviously,
released on their
there is
statements.
the new fuel variant being used. I think it's 10% has to be sustainable. I must admit, I don't know the
It's the
exact
Eco 10
element.
stuff
It's-
or whatever.
Yeah,
but
E10
yeah,
kind
it's
of
called.
thing. So whether that is what's not necessarily causing an issue, but they're saying that it burns at like a higher temperature and things like that. I mean, we'll probably hear more about this in the oncoming few days. The thing is, Red Bull don't have a lot of time to kind of really investigate and turn around. Second race is literally
No.
next weekend in Jeddah. So if it is
And
a fundamental
it's dangerous
issue,
as well because
well, this is it.
I mean,
even
one thing that we
well,
didn't
it's dangerous
mention.
because if it's in Max's case, obviously it was a gradual failure. They literally said, "Right, no, kill it,
That's it.
try and make it to the pit lane." But Perez happened so suddenly it locked his rear axle.
Well, this was it.
Like,
So
imagine that happening
Yeah.
at one of the high-speed corners in Jeddah next week. Like that guy is.
Yeah,
It's
but I mean,
100%.
like,
that's
the one thing that we didn't mention was Gasly's teammates Tsunoda had no issues with the car whatsoever.
yeah.
Other
Yeah.
than his pace.
Yeah.
Other than his pace.
It's
He's just nowhere.
But, the one sort of on a slightly unrelated note as well. One kind of final bugbear for me was the Alpines. You all know I'm an Alpine fan. I love that team. I've supported that team through all of their various iterations from, Lotus and Renault and stuff like that. But I look at their cars today and I just see Force India or Racing Point,
Yeah.
whatever.
I just don't
Especially
get
that Ocon's in it
trash.
as well. It's
It's
just,
just trash.
I just don't get the need to have them fully pink for 2 races. Like
Wha-
we've had
why?
them as a we've had them as a sponsor in F1 for 4 or 5 years. Like we know that their branding
No
is
one
pink. You don't
likes
need to
it.
you don't need to shove it in everybody's face.
This is it. Like there are
very
so many.
pushy, innit?
I know, and this is the thing. Like with so many other teams,
Infuriating.
I know there are so many long-term sponsors for each of the teams, and it's not because they're completely changing the color of the livery. Like Santander, huge long-term sponsor of Ferrari. Casio have been part of Red Bull for ages. Rauk as well. There's so many which have had affiliations and sponsors with particular teams for such a long time. And
Exactly.
It
I could
infuriates
understand,
me.
right?
Why they just
I could
they've got to take
understand.
it all over. I don't get it.
I
do
could
not get it.
understand if the branding is like it was on the Aston last year. If it was minimal and like one
Yes.
pink line, fine. I can see
Almost
like
like
them
the trim that
highlighting
they've
the
got on the
reverse.
race suits. I can
100%.
just
But
about
you look at
deal
the
with
normal
that.
Alpine livery.
Yeah.
Pink is not minimal. It's obvious.
It's just everywhere.
I don't get it.
Why
I
it's
really
only
don't get
to
for
be
2
fair,
races, I don't know.
If we're going to be comparing liveries, which one would you prefer to have then? I would prefer the 2021 livery to the 2022 livery for Alpine.
Last year's Alpine livery, I think, was the,
Last year's Alpine
was
wiped
the
the
best
floor.
one.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
absolutely
Like,
it
wiped
was
the
the
floor.
best
If I'm
one.
honest, what I think the bare minimum or the maximum they should have done is done like an Aston last year. So you obviously had the current Alpine setup or whatever.
Yeah.
Just put the divide between the blue and black. Just have a little pink
Yeah.
strip.
Like, why not? I mean, where you've got like the red that was on the Alpine, change that to the sort of BWT pink
To-
or
to
something
pink,
like that.
yeah.
Like, there were so many other ways and iterations
it,
for them
yeah.
to do it, and I just got to admit, I know it's for 2 races, but I just think it's pure overkill, and it looks terrible. But that is just me as an Alpine fan. But obviously, after all of that kind of, I suppose, well, not chaos and madness, but obviously what was a rather exciting race end. 1-2 for Ferrari. Mercedes getting a
3
podium.
and 4. Yeah, they got
Now,
out of
I'm
jail.
kind of happy because I did predict a Hamilton podium. Didn't quite go the rest of it. I actually predicted Verstappen to be winning with Georgie Russ P2, Hamilton P3. So there you go, 1 out of 3 for the first race this season. I'll take it.
But I don't think that Mercedes deserved it.
No, this is the sort of, not necessarily the issue, but this is
I mean,
the
I
talking point.
don't know if I agree with that in a sense though, because they maybe didn't deserve the podium, but the fact that they were in that midfield
They're
the whole time,
they're
they
definitely
didn't drop
third
back.
best team.
Yeah.
The key,
and
the
they-
key factor for me.
Yeah.
They were there to when Red Bull or if it was Ferrari messed up. I think they deserved it in the
That's
sense
it.
of
Well, you say that.
that's where they were.
If that safety car
Yeah,
doesn't happen,
okay.
right? By the time that when the safety car happened, right, there was 37 seconds between Leclerc and Hamilton.
Which
37
normally is
seconds.
completely the
Over a
other way around. That is it's
and that
madness.
roughly works out to just under. It's between like 8.5, 9/10 a lap.
Yeah.
That is a substantial amount of time. I don't think Mercedes have ever been that far behind a competitor since maybe their introduction when they were running Schumacher. And
Maybe,
whatever.
sort of 2011, 12, they sort of certainly weren't probably on a similar kind of pace to the front runners. But yeah, I mean, whilst it's brilliant for them to have finished in that position. At the same time, it is a result of fortune in events going their way. If Perez doesn't lock that rear axle, I'm backing him to defend that. I know it came down to that absolute last lap, but we all know what Perez is like when it comes to his driving defence. Really, really don't see Hamilton getting past easy. If he did,
No, me neither, to be
he
honest.
probably would have exceeded track limits at turn 4, which, you know, is obviously that's what happened with Max, you know, last year, and that he got penalised for that. So, you know, I don't see Mercedes as even podium contenders at the minute. I really don't. Not
They're third best.
Not
I
out
think
and
they're
out.
in, they're in a
Not
bit
out
of,
and out.
they're
the other big, obviously, driver of the day, I think, went to Charles Leclerc, which I kind of get, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't slightly miffed by that. I wanted to see K-Mag get it. Why people didn't vote for K-Mag?
K-Mag got
P5
Bottas for me.
in a Haas.
Unreal.
I mean, for God's sake, like, what's
Bottas,
the
P6,
guy got to
Bottas,
do?
P6
Bottas,
in an
you got
Alfa
Yeah,
Romeo.
Bottas.
Zhou Guanyu as
P6.
well. Like, first race of F1,
On his
10th, he
debut,
got points.
getting a point,
Like, that's-
amazing. I mean, would have been cool if Mick had maybe snuck in there, but whilst I'm talking on this now, I put this in the Discord while the race was going on, and on that safety car restart, he lost 2, maybe 3 places in the opening lap and a half. Don't get me wrong, he's the son of arguably the greatest Formula 1 driver of all time. He is kind of seemingly untouchable. Like, there's almost nothing that he could do wrong. He's a nice guy. He is a phenomenal driver. There's no doubting his ability and his credentials in terms of being in F1 at this moment in time. However, you cannot ignore the fact that someone has just come in from being out of an F1 car for 18 months and finished P5 in the first race of the season. Now, I'm not saying that Schumacher's not capable of that. That's not my point at all. But what I'm saying is, if Kevin Magnussen keeps this up, again, this could be a bit of a one-off. It could be a lucky weekend. Again, we've seen teams have this before. But if there is consistently good performances from Magnussen where they are pushing for some of those points, you know, a P7, 8, 9, 10, something around there, and it's consistently Magnussen that is getting them, at what point in the season
Questions
do you
will start
question
being
mark?
asked, yeah.
Yeah, this is it. At what point do you
I mean,
questions start being
I'd
asked
take
of
today with a
Schumacher?
pinch of salt because
Yeah.
obviously this is obviously not accounting for sort of Red Bull should have finished 3 and 4. So you're looking at K-Mag probably realistically would have been P7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still obviously points that Mick's not going to get, but I think the important point is that Ferrari have made it clear from the outset, as soon as his junior career started, they were saying, we are protecting this boy because of
Yeah.
his name.
Yeah.
People are going to have such hype and hope about him. We
But
are
is
protecting
that
him.
the right thing
from
to
everything.
do? Because,
No,
and
it's,
this is-
maybe-
it's really not.
Maybe,
but-
maybe not. But my point is, at every stage of his career, be it we saw it in F2 over the last few years, we've seen it in F3.
Yeah.
Mick Schumacher has he's been very steady progress. Like, he didn't light the world on
Yeah.
fire when he got into
Yeah,
F2.
yeah.
It took him. I'll say that when he won
he has proved
his
himself
F2
there.
was his second. Was it second or third season in F2?
Yeah, it took him a while to sort of get the run of things, and yeah, I agree with you, Moss. And this is my point. He deserves to be there. He's done absolutely everything that he needs to be there on his own merit. Okay,
Yeah.
he has the Schumacher surname, but then again, so did Ralph.
Yeah, exactly.
You get my
Well,
point.
I mean, if we're
He's
going
not
to go
his
talk
dad.
about Ralph,
but this is effectively the point that I'm trying to make. He's not his dad, and I think everyone is guilty to some extent. Like I said, he is there on merit. Has he been given certain opportunities because of nepotism? Because of who his dad is, in the same way that Verstappen has, in the same way that Magnussen has, in the same way that Stroll has. You know, all of these people, Jolyon Palmer you can include in that as well, because of who their dads are, what they get exposed to, in terms of, you know, the access to the best engineers, the best karting parts and things like that. You cannot help but think that because they're going to grow up in that environment, that absolutely they're going to end up being good enough. You know, they are going to
just
be,
get a seat back Proxer, really.
yeah, but
I
this is
will
the thing.
counter
He's
that.
not his dad. He's not his
I think
dad.
one
And
interesting to think about with
I've not
Schumacher,
seen
though,
anything to
is-
say that he is a world champion. If you not in the same way when Verstappen hit the scene, when he arrived in F1, he was really, really hotly spoken about and was doing the business. Okay, a bit hot-headed, had some accidents, spun the car, but you could see something that I think true F1 fans looked at and think, yeah, this guy has got something. I don't see that in Mick. I really don't.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
you say that. I will
It's
counter
different.
that. How many people saw that in Carlos Sainz? Now, I know it's a little bit
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
Obviously, that say Carlos Sainz
Yeah, good
Senior
point.
was in WRC, but again, really famous dad at the arguably at the top of his field.
Yep.
Yeah.
How many people? I'm going to say. People in our community know how long I've been a Science fan because I don't shut up about it. But
Yeah.
how many people other than me have been talking about science over the last 4 or 5 years?
True.
You know,
Not a
I
lot.
I
think
think
it's
at
a
his peak
very.
at McLaren, though, wasn't he, really? That's when that
Yeah.
kind of... That
Oh,
really
no,
big set of hype
I
came
I
from
He's been
disagree with
Sainz.
that.
about
I think
quite a
I think
bit,
his
hasn't he?
I think his first season at Ferrari last year, I think beats anything he's done in a McLaren. That's just me.
Yeah. Do you know
Yeah,
what? I'd agree with you on that. But
Yeah.
again, the other. Speaking about science, an insane performance today. It is a P2, but the more I look at science, the more I don't think he's cutthroat enough, and I put him in the same kind of level in the same field as Bottas. They're both insane drivers. Insane drivers. They've both got the ability to win on their day. I don't think they've got that last 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever it is, to be ruthless enough or that extra bit of talent to actually get a world championship. Hamilton has it in buckets. Verstappen
it's a
has
bit,
it in
though,
buckets.
is this-
Alonso, even now, to an extent, has it in buckets. There's a difference when it comes to amazing drivers that do fantastic in Formula One compared to Formula One world champions. Let's just look, okay, very briefly at the latest F1 champions. So you've got Verstappen, you've got Hamilton, Raikkonen, Alonso, Button as well, Vettel. You look at each and every one of them, and they're different from a Bottas.
Well, I mean,
Do you get what I mean?
Going into it,
You
I get
almost
what you
can't
mean.
put it in words, and that's my point. I don't see Sainz in the same light, or several other drivers, to be honest, in that same level.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't.
difficult. I think
Mark Webber,
I don't.
amazing driver, just not cutthroat enough.
I don't think we can make that conclusion from this. I think he's been open about how he's struggled adapting to these cars a lot quicker than,
Yeah.
a lot slower than Charles.
Yep.
If you look and today, especially today or in qualifying, he didn't really get much of a shot at Leclerc or
No.
anybody. The one shot he did get, he got a shot at Verstappen and he made it stick.
Yep.
But I think last year is for me a more of an indication about how when you were seeing him battling against Norris, against Leclerc in the odd
Yeah,
race, or
Yeah.
Ricardo and stuff. I think I saw plenty of fight from him this year. I think when he gets used to this car, and if Ferrari stay up the front and Red Bull can't get their act together reliability wise, I would not be surprised to see that Ferrari's taking paint off each other at some point, because I think
It's
that
kind
is
of what I want. I just want. I
Yeah,
want to
I
be
want it
proved wrong.
because-
Well, this
on
is the
that
thing
front.
now. This is the thing that can happen now is they can scrap, they can go against each other, or he will become that Bottas to
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc. Like it
But,
can
I mean,
happen.
we don't want to
this season
see.
will-
We don't want to see what happened at McLaren when Sainz announced that he was leaving, where him and Norris really went at each other.
I get that. I mean,
But by the same token, I think Sainz has shown throughout his career, as soon as he gets a hint that he's not going to be the driver, or he is moving into a number 2 role, he leaves. Toro Rosso, they promoted someone else. He went went to Renault. As soon as he was getting beaten up by Danny Rick,
it's a different
he
story
went to
though.
McLaren. As soon as it became clear that Norris was becoming McLaren's wonder child, that's when he left and he announced going to Ferrari.
But that's it. I just think what's very, very interesting is that classing drivers as 1 and 2 is a very kind of niche way of doing it, but it does work.
It can label people for their careers.
It absolutely does work with it, and that's exactly my point. I fear, just from previous races, for circumstances, he's got all the fight. He is more than capable of winning races on his day, but because he just seems to have that kind of label somewhat hanging over him, and I really, really do hope it gets proved wrong. I really, really hope we see over certainly the next few races where Ferrari do have that dominant car. They need to do a little bit of what Brawn did in 2009. Like, whilst they've got it, bloody use it and make it count before Mercedes start catching up with upgrades, before everything else starts coming together from the other teams. But I don't know. We can only wait and see. Well, I guess really the only sort of last thing to kind of go over is any kind of major takeaways from your guys' point of view. I mean, for me, I've got a couple, and I'm sure a couple of you guys agree with them, so I'm only going to say the one that I don't necessarily know about. But yeah, Aston Martin. Aston Martin is the big one for me. Just kind of absolutely nowhere. I don't know. Would things be different when Vettel's back in the car? I mean, the car just looks a bit useless. Looks like a bit of an ornament going round, really. But
yeah, absolutely.
Wait and see what they do.
Well, this is it. If those Red Bull cars, so Perez, Verstappen, and Gasly, didn't DNF, then the last 6 cars were all Mercedes-powered cars.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big talking point. You got Hulkenberg, Latifi, Norris, Ricciardo, Albon, and Stroll. All of them Mercedes-powered. All of them just didn't have the pace today. Nowhere near. All of them struggled. And it's just, is this a correlation, or is it just because it's Bahrain? I guess we'll see as the season plans out, but it's something that I'm worried about, to be honest, because it's only Mercedes that's on top of it at the minute.
That's it. Hanson, any big takeaway from you?
I've got a couple, to be honest with you, from the entire weekend's proceedings. One major thing for me was Magnussen just being a massive morale boost, it seems, for the sport in general, but more for Haas, because I think Haas have gone through the ringer recently with all the stuff that's been going on with Ukraine and stuff. So I think him being back in that unit has been a massive morale boost for a start, which has been great. And unfortunately, which I think you'll all agree with as well, is McLaren. The course of the
this is one thing I want to just mention quickly with McLaren before we go any further. If McLaren carry on like this throughout the rest of the season, I know Norris has got that multi-year deal, but I assume it's the same with Verstappen. If they're not performing, do Red Bull look at him? Perez hasn't got much longer. I'm just saying, like, this is a talking point.
I mean,
Verstappen and Norris already have a very, very good relationship.
That's real proper down the road, but I kind of like that.
But I know we're early, but if this carries on, then McLaren just aren't pulling through. Norris is a winning driver. Even some may say a championship winning driver. He can't be staying in a team like that.
I know. I mean, AJ, you're probably the biggest McLaren fan out of the Blue Fox team. I know it's a bit painful to see, but again, we're one race in.
It's not a good start.
It's not a pretty sight.
It's very early. I just want to put that out there.
And to be honest, I'm still holding out faith, is because over the years, I think if anybody has shown how quickly they can develop a car, it's been McLaren.
Definitely.
True.
Maybe not last year. I think obviously I think a lot of that was pushed obviously by how close Mercedes and Red Bull were pushing each other, but it's historically been two kings of rapid development, and it's been Red Bull and McLaren.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, definitely.
Mercedes.
I remember, JB's title-winning season. McLaren ended ended that season by far with the best car. There's just so much.
Yeah.
That,
True.
say JB had built up such a points lead.
Yeah,
I
I think
remember
one
they
thing to
said
mention
they
with
were
need
McLaren
flying
as
around.
well
yeah.
is obviously they've been hindered a lot in testing and the practice sessions at Bahrain. They've had
Definitely.
braking issues. Ricardo had obviously got COVID, so he's had no time in the car,
Yeah.
and he had a major water leak. I think he did as well at
Yeah.
Bahrain. So I think we'd be a little bit brash to sit and say that McLaren are going to be completely
Yeah.
struggling this year, but they
Yeah,
haven't got a
agreed.
quick turnaround to try and get that car
This is
Yeah.
it. This
back
is
up
it.
to pace.
It
And
is-
the fact of the matter is,
yeah.
if Norris is going slowly in that McLaren, then that McLaren is having issues because that boy has some wheels and he's got
That's it.
a lot of talent to push that
Yeah.
car
Definitely worrying, though,
forward,
isn't
so-
it? It's worrying.
Yeah.
Just to elaborate on the point Hansen made, it say the one encouraging sign for them is they've now got two drivers that are kind of close together. Ricardo, although I can say he went out in Q1 and Norris made it to Q2 yesterday, but in terms of the time difference, Ricardo seems to be right on Norris, and that's what they didn't have that for a good majority last year.
Yeah.
So if they can turn that car around, they're going to have two drivers like pushing each other forward, which is probably the only positive. But
Which we all
I think
want. We all want that.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
Realistically,
I think
just for that
the
constructors' battle in itself.
other takeaway from me again is they're the two major letdowns for me is McLaren and Aston. We all knew that the
Yeah.
Williams was going to struggle.
Yeah.
So it's not really a surprise on that. I say
No.
major talking point for me. I'm loving to see like Haas and Alfa Romeo push forward and back
Yep.
in, sort of jostling with the Alpines and stuff. But and it's nice. I want to take a big point. The biggest point I want to take away is I am so looking forward to seeing Bottas lead a team and have a team
Definitely.
focused around him, because as soon as you saw like them he knows he's the big dog in that team. Like he's got a rookie teammate
True.
who arguably, I mean, Guan Yu Zhou has his admirers. Must say I'm not massive. I think he was probably third on my list of candidates to go in that car. Just given, as I say, I've watched him a load over the last 5 years, and I'm not entirely. I mean, as I say, Blue mentioned it earlier. You get a feeling about a driver, and I've got a feeling about Joe that I think I've kind of placed him in my head already in terms of what I think he's like. But it's going to be so refreshing to see this season with Bottas like having a complete sort of free reign and actually lead a team and be the focus of a team. I think that we're going to see what he's all about this year. I think.
Just for me, biggest thing, Ferrari power. That's it.
Hey,
We just
Ferrari
said that
power.
the
Ridiculous.
Three
Yeah.
sort of the biggest teams.
Haas,
that are up
Alfa,
there,
and
the
Ferrari.
yeah, that's it.
In
They're the three
before
which-
2 races
which
time,
have-
they
still
get
up.
an injunction put on them by the FIA like they have previously.
Yeah.
I was thinking that. I was like, what if we
Yeah.
come out next weekend and they've got a massive
Fuel
thing on their
fire
back?
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never know.
Got the
Well,
V8
I
stacked back
think
there.
that quite nicely summarises it up. To be fair.
Me